Hi, welcome to Manas Shil YouTube channel. Before we start, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Let's start the video. If you haven't watched the previous video, I'll link it in the description box, or you can click here. Tensura Volume 19. Chapter 1. The First Battle. Future Plans. To summarize Kagali's story, she had free will before Feldway's arrival, and she had made plans to betray him after consulting with Leon in secret. After walking a tightrope of a battle, Feldway showed up just as she was about to jump into the magic transfer circle. Immediately after that, she was taken over without even being allowed to resist. The timing was so bad that it could only be described as bad luck. Yuki had apparently regained his self-awareness, so it would have been a perfectly happy ending if they could have escaped to her country. However, it was meaningless to talk about that now, as it was a hypothetical story. In any case, there was no doubt that there was a close relationship between Feldway and the domination. In other words, the credibility of Diablo's reasoning had increased, but I didn't like to admit that, so I presented a negative possibility. The problem is the condition for triggering the ultimate dominion. Michael seems to be able to transfer certain powers, and it may be possible to activate it from a distance, as long as someone can see you. In my case, I was able to exert a certain amount of power over the area I could see through the Argus spell. This was one of the secret techniques that I wanted to keep secret as much as possible, since it allowed me to take people by surprise from a great distance. However, I should have realized that what I could do, others could do as well. That's what I was thinking, but Guy denied it. It's possible, but if it's a spatial power, or even a power that affects the mind, I think the conditions for activating it would be more severe. I was convinced that was the case. As I had said many times, spatial transportation required one to know the positional coordinates of the destination. If you could get that information, then you could influence the area around the coordinates as an application. Or, if you know the positional coordinates, it is easy to activate the spell. When I think about it, it makes me feel vain that I was so happy when I said it was a secret technique. In the first place, Feldway was not the only one who was Michael's eye, and it was strange that Kagali was free when Michael gave her the power. In other words, it is probably because of the bear's betrayal that Michael became more cautious. If he had been able to activate the ultimate dominion when he became more alert, he would not have needed to rely on Feldway. But since that was not the case, there must be a reason why Feldway was Michael's eye. Then, was Feldway given the ultimate dominion, as Diablo said? Or... This is a speculation, but Michael has taken in Valgren's dragon factor. If so, it would not be surprising if he was able to utilize her parallel existence ability. So that's a possibility. I had thought that a certain level of control could be lent to him, but I hadn't expected him to have duplicated all of the abilities. Nevertheless, I could not ignore Sealsen's opinion, and now it really felt as if I was dealing with Michael. In that light, it certainly explained why he could use the ultimate dominion. On the contrary, he could even use Castle Guard, so it was no wonder that my attacks were completely unsuccessful. He had been bluffing when he blocked my sword, and he actually hadn't even needed to defend himself. I was really relieved that I didn't show off my secret techniques. What Guy says is correct, but if Feldway can use the same powers as Michael, doesn't that explain what happened? So Michael was ceding his power to Feldway. No, not that. I'm saying, as much as I hate to admit it, that both of them can utilize the same powers. What the hell are you talking about? No, so it's that. Valgren's parallel existence. That's Guy for you. He understood what I was trying to say so easily. Guy and I both frowned at that unpleasant speculation. I was hoping to be mistaken, but that was also why I definitely thought it to be the case. It looks like they weren't all taken over at the same time, so that's fortuitous. The fact that the effects of control did not occur at the same time was obvious from the fact that there was a time lag between Zelario's domination and the domination over Leon and Kagali. In addition, the extent of the influence of control was also limited. This was evidenced not only by the difference between the inside and outside of the castle, but also by the fact that Pico and Gracia, who had been in isolation from the outside world with the igloo, were not taken over until later. Leaving aside the pros and cons of the igloo, this information was valuable. That was because it confirmed that domination could not be achieved unless it was recognized by some means. Rain and the others slacked off, but it was still a worthwhile achievement. It proves once and for all that you must be able to recognize your opponent in order to dominate them. Guy seemed to agree with me, and said so in a dissatisfied tone. The reevaluation of rain certainly seemed to be a touchy subject. But, well, this allowed us to correctly evaluate the enemy. I can't keep up with this conversation at all. I briefly explained to Sylvia-san, who raised her hand in a reserved manner. El-tan was terrifyingly sharp, but Sylvia-san didn't seem to be the same way. Or perhaps I was comparing her to the wrong people. Leon's knight captains didn't seem to be able to follow our conversation either. To begin with, Leon's subordinates were a different story. It didn't matter how smart they were. In the first place, without an ultimate skill, it would be impossible for one to understand this conversation. As one could see from the fact that El-tan had founded a country as the Celestial Emperor, it meant that Sylvia-san's daughter had a certain savvy over her. In fact, while Sylvia-san is said to be stronger than El-tan in terms of strength, El-tan is said to be more insightful and adaptable. It went without saying that El-tan had the political strength, so they were able to share their roles properly. And so, while explaining the situation to Sylvia-san and others, I tried to sort out the situation in my own way. It was likely that Michael was duplicating his powers and giving them to Feldway. So, in effect, Feldway could not be defeated without breaking through the castle guard. And because he could probably utilize not only the ultimate dominion, but also the control system, it was impossible for anyone but an ultimate skill user to defeat him. In that case, the number of people who could take on Feldway and Michael would be limited. Well, it's not all bad. Oh. My attacks didn't work at all against Feldway, but I feel better now that I understand why. Moreover, Vulgrim told me that the ability is fueled by loyalty to the master. When Rudra used it, he was invincible, as long as there were Imperial subjects, but that has nothing to do with Feldway. His subjects are probably phantoms, so it makes me feel a little less guilty. Killing innocent people in the Empire was honestly too much for me. Well, actually, if that was really the only way, I guess I had to accept that the happiness of the many would come from the sacrifice of the few. I thought I was prepared to do it, but I wasn't completely sure if I would. I think I may have just been bluffing with Michael, but I didn't think I could have actually done it. The phantoms are invaders, so they must be prepared to die. Therefore, it would be polite for me to resist with all my might, and my conscience would not be hurt. When I expressed my feelings straightforwardly, Guy was taken aback. Ha! Are you still talking so naively? Well, it's true, but if you overthink things, you'll be the one who dies. I even got some friendly advice from him, but I thought that Guy was surprisingly lenient to his people. Now that we had discussed the main enemies, there was still one left. So, who is this Chahal? That's the guy I had been dealing with. To be honest, I thought I had gotten pretty strong, but that guy was surprisingly powerful. I barely survived, because we shared the same attributes. When I brought up the question, Benimaru took a stab at it. He has always had a cool personality, yet he was praising Chahal, his enemy. Well, he wasn't praising him, exactly, he was just accurately analyzing the enemy's strength. It's rare for Benimaru to honestly admit defeat. No, I didn't lose though. It's just that I can't easily say that I'll win the next time. I wondered about that, but was relieved to see that Benimaru's confidence was still intact. However, if there was more than a fourfold difference in the estimated existence value, a slight difference in ability will not be enough to overturn it. Benimaru had gone through a lot of training to reach his current level of skill, so it was unlikely that he would grow rapidly from here. Well, as long as he didn't lose heart, he could stand up and face them. On the other hand, I had to be careful not to let Benimaru do anything rash. He, for example, seemed to like Benimaru and said, "That's the spirit." Then, as if remembering something, he suddenly muttered, "Come to think of it, what was the name of the bastard who summoned me?" This was answered by Mizarian Rain. It was a low-life bastard who called himself the great magician Chahal, the head of state of the great magic empire. That bast, he was a high human created by the divine ancestor. I think even the divine ancestor considered him a failure because of his mental problems. It's said that he was killed after summoning Guy a long time ago, and he was mentioned in various grimoires and history books. The books I saw in Ingratiate didn't mention him by name, but his reckless misfortune made him quite famous as a fool who unleashed the worst demon onto the world. That demon was the primordial, that is, demons like Guy and Diablo and the others, so it was understandable that El-tan and Gazel were wary of them. But now, it was no use worrying about them. The worst of them, Guy-san, has become one of us. Also, the said fool's name was Chahal, which couldn't be a coincidence. While I was pondering over this, Kagali said something surprising. It can be that Chahal, he was definitely my father. She said that Feldway had protected Chahal, who had lost his body, and had become a wandering soul, and had incarnated him in Footman. According to her conversation with Chahal, there was no doubt that he was Kagali's father. However, Sylvia-san objected to this. No, that can't be right, can it? He admitted that he and I are colleagues. He was the first highborn, brother of the divine ancestor, and I was the third. By the way, Luminous-chan was the second. Jahal is the ancestor of the high humans created by the divine ancestor. And naturally, the true ancestor, the vampires, is Luminous. So, the ancestor of the high elves is Sylvia-san, I guess. It's said that there were other highborns, but they are not known to exist now. They are said to have disappeared into history like Jahal. Incidentally, Gazel's grandfather, Grand Wargo, the first hero king of the dwarf race, was a kind of ancestor who inherited the blood of the high dwarf and was a close friend of Sylvia-san. For long-lived species, even historical figures were acquaintances. Sylvia-san and Guy were like living witnesses of such history. I didn't think it was wrong to say that. My father was definitely a high elf. Kagali was puzzled, but she understood that her perception was more unreliable. She was trying to figure out why there was such a discrepancy. And the conclusion arrived at the same time. My father, by Jahal, was. He was taken over by Jahal, then. Well, what can I say, that guy was a lowlife bastard. It's no wonder Rain and Mizari couldn't get rid of him, but that seems to have caused a problem. That is what Kagali, me, and Guy had to say about it. With the three of us in agreement, Jahal's identity had been confirmed. So then, my father is. Kagali muttered, leaning back in her chair. Unsure of what to say to her, we decided to leave the room quietly. And then, it was night. Guy and I moved to another place to have a drink together. By the way, the drinks being served were the ones I kept in my stomach. It was the result of Guy's forceful insistence that I prepare the same drinks that Rain and the others had been enjoying. I wanted to tell him to shove it, but I was a sucker for things that would last. It was too tedious and tiring for me to defend myself against Guy, so I decided to give in and sell him the favor. Diablo, Benimaru, Sae, Rain, and Mizari were also present at the party. Another person, Sylvia-san, was also present, and the secret late-night meeting proceeded quietly. What would we do with this country now that Leon was gone? That was the content of this secret discussion. Since we had been able to ascertain the enemy's strength during the daytime meeting, we were now reconfirming our future plan. The damage to the town was not too bad, but Leon's castle was badly damaged, and there were people who had nowhere to go. It was a problem that there was no place to receive the refugees. The general consensus of the knight captains was to stay in the country and rebuild the town and castle, but if the aggressors were to target this place, it would be difficult to deal with it. They would not be able to stop them from overrunning the place, because they did not have enough forces to fight them. Now that Leon was gone, the probability of this place being targeted was low, but even so, I didn't think we should do nothing about it. If they're going to stay, why don't we just let them do what they want? That was Guy's opinion. I'm the one who was against it, because it was dangerous. But you know, there's no point in just talking about ideals, right? You can ask L-chan, but I don't think Sarian will accept them either. The total population of Leon's country was less than 20 million. It would be impossible to prepare enough food to feed such a large number of people. Well, they could endure for a few days, but if they didn't know for how long, there was nothing they could do. The people of the Golden Land El Dorado would be psychologically disheartened if they were to be sheltered without working. To be away from one's work for a long period of time was enough to make one feel uneasy. The idea of evacuating to another country was unrealistic, as was pointed out earlier. On the other hand, having someone stay behind to guard them was also. By the way, Guy, you won't be staying here, right? Well, I guess it's fine. I guess it's no good. As I doubt, eh? What, it's not like we have a choice. This place is of little importance anyway, but even so, there's always the possibility that they'll take it out on them. No way, is this a joke? I hadn't expected Guy to agree so openly, so I was at a loss as to how to respond. I'm surprised. I didn't expect the terribly ruthless and cruel Red King, Rouge, to be such an understanding demon. The people's rumors sure were unreliable. Sylvia-san was surprised. I agreed with her. Are you bastards trying to pick a fight? No way. There's no way I'm going to pick a fight I can't win. Of course not, I'm counting on you, Guy-san. His eyes were glaring. Sylvia-san and I exchanged glances and tried to cover it up with a friendly smile. Well, it was agreed that Guy would defend Leon's territory. Then, Miss Kagali arrived. Oh, Kagali-san. Have you settled down yet? Yes, it was so long ago that I don't even remember the details now. There is no point in getting over-sentimental about it. Kagali replied as such, but it was clear that she was trying to be tough. Mizari had thoughtfully prepared a seat for Kagali. Kagali thanked her and sat down. So, is there something you wanted to talk about? It was Guy who asked directly. I think that was one of Guy's strengths. Perhaps Kagali felt the same way, and she opened her mouth with a wry smile. I just thought I'd tell you everything I know. Looking at Kagali's refreshed expression, I thought to myself, this is going to be a long story. Although I had listened roughly to the discussion during the day, I felt that what I was about to hear would include Kagali's private life. So, I wanted to first ask for confirmation. Are you sure it's okay for us to hear about this? Yes. I am grateful to Rimuru Dono, so if you don't mind, I would love to do so. If she was putting it that way, then there was no reason to refuse. We listened to Kagali's story in silence. It was a personal story. It summed up Kagali's long life as a princess of a great nation. The guilt she felt towards Milan, the fear she felt towards Guy. Her resentment towards Leon and its sublimation. Listening to Kagali's story, I almost felt guilty for having killed Clayman. After all, the Clayman in Kagali's story was a kind and caring man. I could tell from Kagali's tone of voice that he was loved by his friends. However, he had been distorted by his role as Demon Lord, and in the end, he was used by Lieutenant Kondu. As a result, he became the cause of many misfortunes, and was abandoned by Demon Lords, particularly Guy. And I was the one who had killed Clayman. About Clayman, well. Oh, there is no need to apologize. It was I who devised the plan, and Rimuru Dono was just better than I was. After all, this is a world of survival of the fittest, and there is no need to show mercy to the loser. That was also true. In the first place, Clayman had been completely evil from our point of view, and if I hadn't eliminated him, we would have suffered a great deal. Even if you say that there was another side to him, it can only be said to be true. However, there were some things that I should think about regarding the fact that he was probably being manipulated, and I might have even developed some sympathy for him in an unorthodox way. That's why I decided to tell Kagali something that I had been holding back, wondering whether I should tell her or not. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Tyr. Tyr was another one of the moderate clown troupe members who had been giving us trouble. She wasn't as bad as Clayman or Footman, but that didn't change the fact that she had been a nasty enemy. But now that we have an agreement, we were no longer enemies. It was natural for us to help her as an ally, if not as a friend. That's why I rescued Tyr when she was about to be killed by Jahal, but she had been seriously injured while protecting Kagali. She was still resting in her hospital room, but Seal-san was helping her. Isolation of the information particles that constituted Clayman's heart has been completed. Would you like to combine them together to make up for Tyr's missing components? When I was asked this question, I agreed to do so. Looking back on it, I had swallowed Clayman's end whole. I thought I had absorbed all of him as energy, but it seems that the residue had been placed in isolation. I didn't want to leave such a thing behind, and I thought Clayman would be happier to return to his friends, rather than to remain in my body. Perhaps, Seal-san could have revived Clayman completely. It seemed to me that the success rate would have been reasonably high if the emulated soul had been inhabited by the information particle residue and given a temporary body. But I never heard the answer. Clayman was dead. That is why I wanted to help him as a part of Tyr from now on. This was completely my own decision and ego, and I had not been sure if I should tell Kagali and the others. But now, I thought I should tell them. Is that so, that kid, with Tyr, thank you. Kagali muttered and smiled wistfully. I thought I was just doing it for my own self-satisfaction, but I'm glad Kagali seemed to be happy too. It would have been better if the conversation had ended there. By the way, Rimuru-kun, I've been listening to you, and I think you're being too selfish. Indeed, even the divine ancestor didn't do such a crazy thing as collecting the residues of the dead and transplanting them into others. I forgot these guys were here. It would have been better if I had just ignored them, but I took the bait. When did you guys become such good friends? Huh, we don't really get along. It's not bad though. Yeah, that's right. From my point of view, I'd say you're the one who's incomprehensible when you just casually chat with the Lord of Darkness, who is synonymous with fear. It doesn't matter, even if you say something like that, you know. After all, Guy was a little more open-minded than I initially thought. He didn't get angry over trivial things, so as long as you kept in mind the things you should pay attention to, he was easier to get along with than you might think. I knew Rimuru-kun was strange. Even more so than what El-chan told me. To begin with, I thought Guy Crimson there was a horrible demon who became a demon lord after killing my brother Jahal in seconds. If it were that easy to get along with him, no one would have any trouble, right? I didn't have the chance to interrupt her as she rambled on. Seeing us like that, the person in question spoke with a laugh. I think it's quite brazen of you to say that in front of me. Ah, Sylvia-san seems to have taken a liking to Guy. Guy has a tendency to give respect to those who don't fear him. This seemed like a nice start to a good relationship for the future. In any case, I thought I had gotten away from the subject, but that was not the case. So, Remure, what did you do with the claimant residue? Unfortunately, he hadn't forgotten, so I had no choice but to explain. No, it just sort of happened, you know. It really was just a coincidence, when I was saving them from Jahal's attack. I just let it slip out of my mouth. It's a little sad that I had gotten used to this, but telling the truth was out of the question. I had no intention of revealing my abilities, and if the situation arose, I intended to keep silent. That's suspicious. Are you hiding something? Talk to him more. He always keeps his mouth shut about the important things. Shut up, you guys. There's a lot of things I don't understand, and I don't know why it happened this time either. Actually, it was Seal-san who did it, right? I don't know anything about it. So, I don't want others to get involved in it either. Rather, he and Sylvia-san had never met before, yet somehow, they were in perfect harmony. Today was the first time we had met too, but Sylvia-san looked just like Eltan, so it didn't feel like it was the first time. And so, unexpectedly, the late-night secret meeting became friendly and lively. Following the flow of the conversation, Sylvia-san broke the ice. By the way, Kagali-san, I wasn't sure if I should ask this, but I was wondering if you could tell me about your friends. There was no mockery in her manner, but rather an air of determination. Kagali, who responded, was also puzzled to see Sylvia-san like that. But then, as if remembering something, she opened her mouth. I have an idea of what you want to ask me, so it's fine. Also, you don't have to address me with San, so you can just drop the honorifics. Thank you. Then you can call me Sylvia as well. Now, I know it may seem sudden, but it's about Lapis, right? Yeah. You heard about it. Yes. Lapis was reacting to your voice when you called him Sarian. Sarian, if the Sarian from the Sorcerer's Dynasty is Lapis's real name, then I've got a hell of a person on my side. Their conversation continued. I had no idea what they were talking about, but they seemed to be talking about Lapis's true identity. Or rather, Lapis is an ex-chosen hero. Yes, that's right. And by the way, he's my husband, and El-chan's papa. Seriously? Dead serious. I looked at Kagali in astonishment, and she nodded back calmly. She seemed to have already sorted things out in her mind. And the same could be said for Sylvia-san, I guess. It must have been a long time ago, but she didn't show any sign of resentment towards Kagali, even though she should have resented her more for the fact that her husband, who she thought was dead, had been turned into an undead elf. I'm sorry. I don't blame you for hating me, but I'm still glad that I met Lapis. I'm happy to hear that too. It makes me believe that he didn't change his character, even after he died. The way he defended you at the end made me realize that the man I loved is gone. According to Sylvia-san, Lapis could have escaped if he had wanted to. But he didn't do so, perhaps, because he was proud to be a member of the moderate clown troupe. Well, there was no way of knowing the truth now. Well, that's not necessarily true. I didn't mean to comfort her, but those words came out of my mouth. It was selfish of me, but I couldn't give up hope. Seal-san had told me that the chances of them being alive were not zero. That's why I decided to believe that Yuki and Lapis were still alive. In the first place, Yuki had always given me a lot of trouble, but as he was also Japanese, and a disciple of Shizu-san, I expected to be more shocked at his death. The reason why I did not feel sad was because I suspected that his death was a lie. No, it's true that he had disappeared right before my eyes without a trace, but I couldn't trust him. Because I had been deceived by him many times. That's why he's alive. As long as I thought that, there was no need to be sad. You're right. The boss is really stubborn. Yeah. Sarian has been alive all this time, and hasn't even contacted me, so he really is a no-good person. He just reincarnated as an undead elf, and lost his memory, leaving me alone. It's no use worrying about such a no-good guy, so I'll change my mindset. Apparently, my words were not in vain. I was worried that my words might have been inappropriate, but if I could lighten Kagali's and Sylvia's feelings even a little, then I had done a good job. And so, the late-night conversations continued. Overcoming today's sorrows to win tomorrow's battles. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy it.